Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, thanks to the team over at Bombusby, we're going to be taking a look at the brand new DNA Design DK-34 upgrade kit for the Transformers Studio Series DINO and Shatter. Now for those of you looking to add this to the collection, I'll of course be sure to pack a link down in the description box below, and this is one which I've actually been really excited to get a hold of. Unlike the upgrade kit that we recently took a look at for the Studio Series Slug, this actually does appear to upgrade the figures, but we'll be sure to touch base with how they will actually incorporate in just a second. Let's very quickly go over the box art. As you can see, we've got a really cool image of both Dino and Shatter here at the front, and as we flip around here to the back, it does showcase how some of these new components will contribute to the overall look of their robot modes. Now I have seen some comments out there in regards to as to why they've decided to pack a kit for both Dino and Shatter in the same set, especially considering that they are completely unrelated characters, and I think it's simply down to the fact that they want to save costs. Considering that all of these components are red and gunmetal grey, it just makes it a lot cheaper for them to print all of these pieces at once and package it as one set instead of perhaps doing this at a later stage. But as you can see, what we do get is a brand new, more movie accurate unmasked head sculpt for the car mode Shatter, and some brand new, basically dekibbled arms for the jet mode Shatter, and probably the piece of which I am the most excited for would have to be the all new and improved lower section of the legs for Studio Series Dino, so that we can actually recreate and pull off some of those dynamic poses that we saw in the movie. Now we're going to start off firstly by taking a look at the car Shatter, and then of course I'll go into more detail in regards to the other pieces later on in the video. And here she is. Now to be honest, this mold in general I am not the biggest fan of. I think design wise it looks pretty cool, it's got some really nice details, but the build quality is what massively lets this down. But if I were to be critical of just the design in itself, it is of course that she is sporting her inaccurate, almost battle mask equipped head sculpt, which I don't actually ever think we see her use in the movie, and if we do, it's for a very brief flashback sequence on Cybertron. So this was really the biggest issue that I and many collectors had with this. It was decently sculpted and painted, but it really didn't resemble the character at all. So that's where DNA Design have come in and have basically given us that much more movie accurate looking head sculpt, which I think looks fantastic. The detailing front to back is spot on. I love the piercing red eyes, the gunmetal silver, and the mechanical details for the mouthpiece all look really cool. But considering this figure came out well over 2 years ago, I'm not too sure how many collectors are actually going to pick this up solely for the purpose of this alternate head sculpt. But nevertheless, as far as actually swapping them is concerned, it can be a little difficult. The head is on incredibly securely, so you do literally just have to rip it clean off the ball joint, but once it does become detached, the new one does very easily just pop into place, and that to me looks so much cooler, to the point where I'm actually going to be displaying this figure now in my collection, whereas beforehand she would usually just end up in a storage tub. I think in terms of a display, she actually looks really nicely done. You can see the plastic match from the head and the torso isn't too far off. If anything, the plastic from Hasbro has a glossy tint, whereas this one is slightly more of a matte finish, but in the grand scheme of things, I think it looks awesome, and we get all of the same range of articulation that we would get on the original version. If anything, it's slightly better, so you can see the head can dip all the way down, up, as well as rotate left to right. We can also tilt it side to side, so yeah, that is definitely a marked improvement. I think she now looks great. It is just a shame that all of the pieces continuously want to pop off. But that isn't it for this character. As for her jet mode counterpart, they've also given us some pretty cool looking hands. Now as we bring the original versions in here for a closer look, as you guys can see, the lower forearm was essentially a plank. As we turn around here to the back, you can see how it was essentially the entire top section of the jet mode, which didn't really have that much distinctiveness where the sculpt was concerned. The hand was basically just a brick that looked pretty bad in my opinion. So that's where these new components come in. Now in terms of sculpt work, they are very similar, although the paint does slightly differ. So whereas on the Hasbro offering we get a slightly more metallic gunmetal finish, with the new versions they are definitely more of a matte colour. But still, I think the sculpt work is pretty much on point. The way you integrate these is by simply sliding off the mushroom peg here for the bicep, so the original version will just pop clean off, and then we can slide the all new and improved arms in, which can, upon the first time doing it, be a little tricky, as I do think they are ever so slightly larger when in comparison to the Hasbro offering, but you do just want to slide it on there and it will snap into place. Now as you can see, it's looking very similar, but what you'll then want to do is take this additional hinge joint, pull this section back, rotate at this ball joint, and there is a tiny cutout that will just groove over the top here of this slot, and as you can see, that definitely does create a much cleaner look, at least from the front profile, for her hands, and it actually creates some distinctiveness to the design, whereas before the hand would just blend in to this brick on the back. Now it actually does look like a proper hand, although I'm not too keen on this huge gaping circular hole that we've got here at the front, but there is a comparison between the both of them. As we just come around here to the side, considering we do get a panel which flips up, it does make these slightly more kibbly, but the articulation is identical, so we do get a soft ratchet joint which can bend to 90, as well as the same range of rotation here at the biceps. Sadly no form of wrist rotation, but yeah, undeniably an upgrade, and I do think it makes this figure look ever so slightly better. Oh, and just very quickly, as you guys can see here, we have both of the upgrade components installed for her, and I think she looks so much cooler, especially here from a front-on perspective. I still do wish, however, that we didn't have these glaring ports, but as we just come around here to the side, I really don't think the kibble's too bad, and in regards to the changes made to transformation, it is essentially that you just have to take these panels, rotate those around, and snap them back into what would be their original positions, and basically the transformation is completely unaltered if you do these steps. And then finally we turn to what is undeniably the star of the show, that being the upgrade components for the Studio Series Dark of the Moon Dino. The reasoning behind why I actually picked this kit up: I am a massive fan of the character, and the character design probably has something to do with my love for Transformers 3, and I know this will be the sole reason why many collectors actually pick this up. Now before we actually delve into the upgrade components, yes, I too would have absolutely loved for them to have taken this slightly further and had given him some all new arm blades, as these are just way too small and dainty when in comparison to what we see in the movie. But just in terms of the actual figure's design, one of the biggest areas where he was lacking had to be articulation. In the movie, Dino appeared to be an incredibly agile and flexible character, and I just don't think the articulation for this figure really showcased that, especially where the ankles were concerned. These were fixed into place, they were unable to be tilted side to side and could merely just hinge back and forth due to transformation. Well, that's where DNA Design come in. So with these all new and improved legs, we actually do get a proper ankle pivot, which I think is a game changer for this figure. It's undeniably going to make him so much cooler. So to showcase how these actually swap out, you are going to want to take the thigh pad, hinge this section out just like so, and then basically just wriggle this off on a mushroom peg. It actually comes off a lot easier when in comparison to some of the components for Shatter, and then we can take the new leg and just slide this back on, collapse this panel in, and it's as easy as that. And as you guys can see, we now have a proper ankle pivot here for Dino. Now I will leave this one on here just for a second to show you guys a direct comparison. The detail appears to be pretty much identical. There is a minor difference in regards to the gunmetal grade used here for the toe, and much like Shatter, there is also a very minute difference in regards to the plastic, whereas this one is slightly more vibrant and a little more shiny in comparison to what we're seeing here for DNA Design. I still do think it's a pretty good match. Now just to pop off the other one so that we can see how he looks with both of those new and improved legs, just slide that off, bring this one in and slide it here over the top. He just is going to look so cool. So as you guys can see, we do now get a proper pivot going left to right, and it also does retain the transformation joint, so this too can hinge back and forth. But I mean, how cool is it now that we can actually get this guy into some pretty agile and dynamic poses as seen in that Transformers 3 movie? I just think this makes him essentially perfect. Had they found a way to have given him the arm blades, I think this would have been by far the best representation of the character that we've ever seen. But yeah, this is so cool, makes him a lot more enjoyable, and definitely fixes one of the glaring issues that I and many of you guys also had with the original run of this figure. And the lower leg articulation still retains, and we can also hinge the knees back and forth. And here we have all three in their alt modes, and visually they go completely unchanged, so there really isn't much to discuss in regards to that. But just to showcase how some of the upgrade components do now look, as you can see, besides the addition of two grey hinges here at the top, you probably would be unable to tell that there was any type of upgrade on this figure at all. If I had anything to say, it's that it can be slightly more fiddly to line up these sections of the arms with the tail of the jet. Now, just considering these are on ball joints, they do have a tendency to just pop up every so often, so that can be a little more frustrating, but as you can see, comes together just as nicely as on the original figure. Here we have the car mode Shatter, so we've got the unmasked head here at the bottom. Considering this is slightly larger when in comparison to the original version, there is minimal clearance when you are actually rotating this around for the car mode, and I did actually have the head pop off twice, so that is something worth mentioning, although it will work, and as you can see, it does store away in the exact same position as on the original version. And Dino is probably the most simplistic to transform out of all of them. He really goes completely unchanged. The feet do simply once again peg into some slots on the inside of the doors. And I know there's some out there wondering as to why they didn't go even further and maybe swap out this piece for a Ferrari section. I just imagine it would have been way too difficult for them to have done, and for the price point, it probably would have warranted just a complete set on its own for Dino, and I imagine they didn't want to do that, although I definitely would have picked it up had they given us some swap out Ferrari components, those new legs, as well as some arm blades and perhaps some of those whips that he uses on the highway. I definitely would have picked up just an upgrade kit for this character in itself, but still, the pieces that we do get are very nicely done. They definitely do upgrade the figures, especially in the case of Dino. So for those of you who are a fan of all three, then I really do think this is going to be a great kit, but for those who perhaps are not too keen on some of the components for Shatter, especially considering that she is way over 2 years old, then I don't think the price quite justifies just picking up this set solely for Dino. But at the end of the day, it's just going to come down to personal preference. Definitely a nice set, works well enough, and if you're a fan of all three of these, then it really is a no-brainer. For those of you looking to add this to the collection, I'll of course drop a link down in the description box below to Bombusby, and be sure to let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. As always, I thank you all so much for watching, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.